The first question is English widely accepted in your country, Atala?
It is frequently used in certain areas such as southern Jakarta and Jakarta itself, and but not in the whole country because my country Indonesia is very big, and it is somewhat impossible for the currently it's impossible to reach out every region to teach them to speak English because, and also most of my region in my country is not well developed. It's still Java centrist. It's like in Java Island, it is okay. The English is somewhat okay, but in outside Java, it's not not that good. Yeah,
But your English is pretty good.
because I'm from
Yeah.
beside Jakarta, the city beside
Uh,
Jakarta.
oh,
Yeah, so that's why.
I see, I see. Is it hard for your country to learn English generally?
Generally speaking, I don't think so because the way I mean, yes, because as an Indonesian people,
Yes.
the way we pronounce our words Indonesia
Hmm.
is very, what is it? It's how to say. We easily speak English words because and our accent is not that strong in our English pronunciation, and that's why I think as an Indonesian we can learn English more easy. But since we have so many different languages and accents throughout whole Indonesia, like there's Sumatra, Borneo, and then what is it? Bali. Yeah, there's so many of accent and languages throughout our country. That's why I think it's hard for us. Yeah.
Uh, um, okay. So, what kind of perspective does your I'm sorry, what kind of perspective does your country have towards English? Is it positive or negative?
Mm, my country perspective for English is quite positive because English language has always been accepted by our country, and the people who spoke English in our country is well respected and valued by the society, and yeah, that's why it is positive.
Hi, my name is Nurafidin bin Nur Azdan and I'm also doing an analysis for Indonesia English. So Indonesia is categorized as expanding in the cultural circle and it has its own distinctive English features that distinguish it from every other English. Without wasting any more time, let's get right into the analysis. So how the English extend in Indonesia? One of the factors is British interregnum which happened during the Napoleonic Wars. The British briefly occupied Java from 1811 to 1816 and English was used in the administrative matters during this period. Although the Dutch regained control after the British departure, the short British influence left a linguistic legacy. And the next factors is colonial educations, which English was introduced in Indonesian education during the colonial period, especially in higher education. And it became a language of instruction in some schools and universities, contributing to the familiarity of English among the educated elite. So this is my subject for the interview. His name is Muhammad Atala. He is 90 years old from Bekasi City, Indonesia. And now he is studying International Business Management in University Utara Malaysia. So now we move on to our first questions, which is English widely accepted in Indonesia? So based on the interview, the subject stated that English is frequently used in his country, which is Indonesia, in certain areas such as South Jakarta and Jakarta itself, but not in the whole country. So Indonesia is indeed a big country with a big population, and it is somewhat impossible to reach out to every region to teach and learn English. Furthermore, most of the region in Indonesia is not well developed. For example, the Java Island, their English is somewhat good, but however, the English outside from the Java Island is not good. And the next question is it hard for Indonesian to learn English generally? And based on the subject's answer, yes, it is hard for Indonesia to learn English generally. Indonesian people find it hard to learn English because Indonesia is the world's fourth most populous nation and third largest democracy, having 273 million population. Moreover, Indonesia has numerous regions, and every region has its own language and accent. For example, Borneo, Bali, and Sumatra. And this results in making it difficult for the Indonesian to learn English generally. Based on the interview, Indonesian perspective toward English is positive, as English language is widely accepted and those who speak English in Indonesia is well respected and valued by the society, and some see it as a crucial skill for global communication and education and also career advancement. And however, some may view it as a challenging language to learn due to the differences in grammar and pronunciations. Overall, English proficiency is highly valued in Indonesia, which the perspective is indeed positive. Moving into our next analysis, which reflecting to the interview, there is an English term, specifically an internet slang, which the subject claims that the term is just a mistakenly understood abbreviations, which identify as laugh out loud or LOL. And some of the Indonesian people misinterpret this term as it almost sounds like an Indonesian word, which is tolol, which it means stupid or idiot in the standard English. Next question is, do you think the usage of English lexical items varies among different age groups or social class in your country? And this is indeed true because the subject stated that Generation Z has more exposure to the English language due to the social media influences and also due to English movies. And his father usually use English as he works in Jakarta. This indicates that the society influenced them to learn English indirectly. And usually higher social class get more exposure on English and low social class almost have no exposure due to the lack of access and sources. Next, according to Atala, he stated that he used English particularly in English classes or while speaking to a tourist, and most of the time he preferred to speak in his mother tongue language while having a conversation with his fellow Indonesian friends. And this is because he finds it awkward to use English while interacting with them unless it is a formal settings. Moving on, in the interview, Atala provided me some example regarding these questions. The most common greeting phrase that is usually used by most Indonesian people is, for example, Affiq, mau kemana lo? Or Affiq, where are you going? In English. Additionally, they also use the phrase "What's up, bro?" when greeting their friends. Thus, this usually happens when Indonesians meet and greet their friends, particularly in the casual or informal settings. Based on their observations, most Indonesian people, including Atala, have their own distinctive English accents, and we can notice this when they are speaking, where they pronounce the letter R with a deep throat, and they have a very strong and dry R's, as the Indonesian pronounce R's cleanly with short tongue vibrations. Thus, the accent is much more obvious when they are panicking while speaking English. Based on the interview sessions, Atala agreed that loan words exist in Indonesia. For example, computer, mobile, televisi, and obviously internet. Atala believes that loan word exists due to the one of the factors, which is the social media influence. And moreover, English loan word exists in Indonesia due to the communication and education factors, which English loanwords are often used in formal and informal communications, as well as in educational settings, particularly in academic and technical fields. This reflects the importance of English proficiency in a globalized world. And moving on to the final analysis, which is, do you perform code switching while you talk with your family members at home? And could you elaborate more and give a good example of code switching that you always use? So Atollah stated that he doesn't do code switching or code mixing. However, his father does code switching when giving advice to him about life. His father usually code mix English and Indonesia. For example, he start the sentence with English and the other sentence will be in Indonesian language. And additionally, the subject rarely does code switching Indonesia and English, as he finds it odd to do so with his friends. He only speaks English to tourists and foreign students only. Overall, Indonesia English is one of the great examples of expanding countries of cultural circle. Indonesia showcases a distinctive accent due to the geographical factors and local language. Its lexical features blend English and Indonesian words. And social media has further shaped Indonesia English, with abbreviations, slang, and online jargon becoming prevalent in education communications. Indonesia English reflects a balance between formal English instructions and the need for practical communication skills.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh everyone. So my name is Ameri bin Fauzi, IDI 2208029. Basically, the purpose of this video is explanation or analysis about our grouping assignment on comparison the standard English versus the English on our country chosen. Basically, I choose for Indonesia, which is the expanding country. So the reason why I choose Indonesia, because I want to know how they perceive English. Second, the uniqueness of every ethnic Indonesia have different perspective, have different analogy about English. And the third one, getting to know the importance of English in their country. I want to introduce my subject to you guys, which is my subject from Indonesia. He names as Andi Santoso. He is 27 years old and he's working in a hotel as a receptionist. So for now, I wanna history something about this country, which is the Indonesia, and how the English expanding and evolved to this country. So we have a three main factor how the English expanding to this country. For the first one is because of colonial period, and the second one is globalizations, and the third one is about tourism. For colonial period, it's starting from 17th to 20th century. Indonesia was a Dutch colony for several centuries, and during this time, Dutch was the official language of administration and education. However, English gained prominence and alongside Dutch due to the British presence in parts of Indonesia during the specific periods of history. We are going for the globalizations. In late of 20th century, English became increasingly important in the fields of business, science, technology, and academic. English is proficiency became a valuable skill for international communication and trade. For the last one is tourism. The growth of the tourism industry in Indonesia. English became essential for communication with the tourists. English is widely used in hotel, restaurants, and other service sectors to cater to the international visitors.
It was a small village, and yeah, there's not so much people talking English in there, especially like they don't even care or bother learning English itself. But although in national skill itself, the English is widely accepted in here, but not much people master it when it comes to conversation, and sometimes they can have some hard time to understand what they say, especially a lot.
My subject response to this question is not really, since there's not much people who are speaking English according to his towns, and According to this issue, they have some difficulty to talking with the foreigners or visitors that come to their country or his towns because they refuse to talk in English and they try to using their mother tongue to communicate with the foreign or visitors.
To be honest, yes, it's really hard to say. Like they even almost on every English aspect say like uh how to say like from grammar itself and so past tense or whatever you call it is, and so the basic itself is they find it really struggling to speak it loud, and also how the pronunciation of the word itself like hello, how are you, yeah, they still like having a trouble on the basic itself when they try speaking English generally.
My subject saying that it's really hard to learn English because there's no basic at all. Even the tenses, grammar, or might be make it a full sentence is really hard to them because there's no subject that really mandatory to having English. And even to say hi or hello or might be how are you is really difficult since they are normally use their mother tongue and they are not using English every single day in daily routine.
English, yeah, it can be both. Honestly, some of them are doesn't like English. Like they even like mocking it. What are you trying to say? Like they when in a negative way when some of people reject to learn English. That's for a negative side itself. Like they don't accept English widely in here, but some of them are try to accept it. Just it's because uh, our country need to learn English more often and try to.
For these questions, my subject's response is from what he observed. It can be both, but in his town, people refuse to learn and speak with English language. Most of his town citizens, which is in Surabaya, don't accept English widely, and most of their citizens are using Indonesian language to having conversations. And whenever foreigner or visitors come into the country, especially in his towns, they are using Indonesia as their language. It's not using any English words whenever they are talking to someone new in their town. My subject saying that there's no different terms in their country compared to standard English, since most of them just directly use every terms or words from standard English. From Andy Santoso answer, he stated that usage of gue and kamu have to consider the ages. Since Andy mentioned you only can use gue and kamu to someone who are really close to you and who have the same ages as you. If you are using gue and kamu to someone older, it means rude. Basically, that was a uniqueness of using gue and kamu in their culture. Basically, they are not using you and I, but they are using gue and kamu whenever talking to someone have the same age and who are close to them. For these questions, my subject telling that since most on his town society really prioritize their mother tongue, instead of using in any English words equivalent to deliver something, they are using their mother tongue. It's not using any equivalents from English words to delivering or convey message. And if you are using English equivalents, the citizen or the society in his towns is not understand at all. Instead of that, they are using Indonesian language to convey in everything, and using English language, this is sounds weird and foreign to them.
When they say like halo kabar saya baik, terima kasih sudah menanyakannya. Hello, yeah, it's nice to meet you. I'm good. I'm good. How about you? Bagaimana kabarmu juga? They always like saying that it's really quite.
My subject giving me a simple sentence, which is that how he actually using English to greeting someone, and it's quite different with the Western country in terms of usage a few sentence. So he give example Indonesia greetings, kamu lagi gimana? So it be translated, how are you going? So it's differently used from the Western country, like there are more casual like what's up or how's your day. So it's really really different between the Indonesian language using standard English to greeting someone. So the unique lexical features in Indonesia country in terms of English accents compared to the others English accents in others country. Basically, my subject stated that how Sunda citizens pronounce a few words. Basically, Sunda is a part of Indonesia also, right? And he mentioned about Sunda citizens pronounce words using their deep throat and pressure on a few alphabet like R and D. So whenever the words having alphabet R and D, they have to using their deep throats and pressure a bit on it to make sure it's more thick when saying that words. From the interview sessions, I managed to get a few learned words from Andy Santoso. He mentioned about ambulance, differently pronunciations and differently spelling in their country, which is ambulance pronounced as ambulance and sausage pronounced as sausage, sausage. Basically, it's quite different in terms of spelling and pronunciations, but somehow it's still written the same meaning in standard English.
The English like oh there's enemy di jam 3 like there's enemy at 3 o'clock or like like
For code mixing, I managed to get this information from my subject, which is my subject also a gamers, and he involved playing games with a few foreigners, especially in Malaysia. So he actually managed to using the code mixing, which is mixing of English, standard English with their own mother tongue. Basically, usually sentence that he managed to saying is there's an enemy di jam 3. Basically, there are he actually using these terms while having games with the Malaysian people.
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Muhammad Farhan bin Ramazani from DEC5A. So for this project, I have chosen someone from the expanding country, which is Philippines. The reason why we choose this country because they have a unique characteristic that distinguishes it from other varieties of English. Our interviewee's name is Alan Castle. He is 40 years old and his origin is in Manila, Philippines. Now he currently owns a glamping boutique at one of the well-known glamping boutique resort in Kuala Lumpur, which is Lahile Tiny House. So how did English start to expand in Philippines? During the American colonial era, 1898 until 1946, English began to spread throughout the Philippines. English became the official language of education, governance, and administration when it was brought by the United States and used as the medium of instruction in schools. English is now an official language in the Philippines. He agreed that English is widely accepted in Philippines because English is extensively spoken and understood in the Philippines, where nearly everyone is capable of conversing in the language. Furthermore, it is officially recognized as a second national language. It is possible to communicate in the English with the Filipinos even in the outskirts of Manila.
Yes, English is widely accepted in the Philippines because almost everyone can converse in English, and it's probably unofficially the second national language. So everyone speaks English in the Philippines, um, even though just for a little bit. In the outskirts of Manila and even in the provinces, you can easily converse in English with the locals.
Is it hard for the Philippines to learn English? Our interviewee said that it isn't difficult for the Filipinos to learn English since they were under the American rule approximately 50 years after Spain ceded Philippines to the United States of America, marking the beginning of a brief period time of American authority over the Philippines. As a consequence, English language extensively spoken and it included academic syllabus where English was predominant language during that era. Even the currency they use dollar instead of other words.
I wouldn't say that it's hard because we were actually under American rule for about 50 years, 48, 50 years. So it started during, for a brief time, we were under American rule when Spain surrendered the Philippines to the U.S., to the United States of America. So English is widely spoken because of that. And of course, the Americans taught us how to. It was in the school syllabus, in the academic syllabus. So during those times, English is I would say, is the first language. We even use a dollar to transact.
So for this question, he gave two perspectives, which is positive and negative of the Philippine country regarding to English language. For the positive, he gave an example. English act as international language and business language. So everyone needs to be able to communicate in English, particularly in the field of international relations. He also pointed out subjects such as science, maths are taught in English in their educational system. People view this as a tool to be used in their regular social interaction.
This one is a long subject. I would say that it has both good and bad side. So, for example, positive because English is a business language. It's an international language, so everyone must be able to converse in English, especially in international relations, and in school as well. The major subjects like mathematics, sciences, they're all taught in English. So that's definitely the positive side of it. People look at it as a tool, to use in the daily interactions with people. I would say there's a negative part.
So for the negative side, he mentioned that some people have the misconception that speaking English makes one superior to others, where speaking English is not required in all situations. For example, if you communicate in English when it's not essential, people will perceive you differently and it will interpret an awkward situation.
Part of it because some people think that people who speak English, this is specifically in the Philippines, most especially in Manila itself, the capital city of the Philippines. When you speak English, it's like you are high society. Because when it's not necessary to speak in English, you don't have to use English. So I guess that's the downside. There's this taboo, about speaking in English so that's the negative aspect of it. Like people will look at you differently if you speak in English when it's not necessary. For example, in a public setting, maybe in the market, and everyone is in a local market where everyone is using Tagalog, the national language, and you suddenly speak in English, it will be a very awkward situation for you. So I guess that would be the negative impact.
In this question, he explained that there is no English word used that have different meaning, since the Philippines treat English as a English.
Okay, I tried to think very hard about this. It's a difficult question. First of all, my background, I've been in Malaysia for more than 20 years.
Okay.
And the words that I know in the Philippines were already outdated. Okay. So I tried to think about this really hard. So what I concluded is that there will be no English word that is used in the Philippines that has a different meaning because we treat English as English. So
Yes.
it's So whatever the corresponding meaning, that is the meaning that we take on. So apple to apple, yeah.
Oh.
So we don't.
Oh.
As far as I can remember, we don't have those words that originated from English. Yet we give it a different meaning. I don't think we have that. Yeah.
So for this question, the social classes such as professional sector use English where their vocabulary, accent and grammar would be more varied. Other than that, the rural classes vocabulary is more minimal for them as they only use Tagalog.
Yes, I do think that the usage of English vocabulary varies among different age groups, especially in social classes. I think the more rural you are, or the more rural the person is, I'm sorry to say, the more basic the vocabulary is. So the more that you are in a business setting, of course, I think the vocabulary will be wider. Maybe the accent is also different. The grammar is also different. Yeah. So it definitely varies among age groups. Sorry, social classes. In age groups, I'm not very sure about this because I think even the younger ones or the older ones, um, they share the same kind of vocabulary in terms of like speaking in the proper English. But as you know, you are also a millennial, I guess, or
Yeah.
you are Gen Y or what? Gen Z.
Gen Z, I think.
Gen Z, okay.
Yeah.
You have your own lingo, you have your own
Yes. We have.
vocabulary. So in that sense, I would say that there is some variations. But in terms of like using proper English between age groups, I don't think there is a difference. Yeah, only in social classes.
So, he said that as a businessman, he used English in the professional setting like meetings and business deals, since it is a language frequently used in the setting. He also conversed with the foreigner and the Filipinos in the capital Philippines using English.
Use English when I'm in a business situation, business situation, or in a work setup, maybe in meetings at work or having business deals. I would definitely use English if I'm back in the Philippines, or if I'm talking to uh, to a foreigner, who is not Filipino. But otherwise, even though they are also Filipino, uh, English will be widely spoken in business settings.
There is no greeting in Philippines that refer to English because in Tagalog is "Kamusta," which is not originated from Tagalog, but it is a loan word from Spanish word which refer to "Cómo estás?"
Which word in English?
Okay, this one is also another uh, what do you call this? Another hard thing to answer because as you know, everyone uses English very widely. I mean, all
Yes.
over the world. So uh, I don't remember growing up that I've used any Tagalog greetings.
Mm.
So we usually use English all the
Oh.
time. So uh, what do you call this? Yeah, we never use Tagalog. We never use Tagalog as a greeting, except
Mm.
for I think you would know is "Kumusta," which is also not
Mm.
Tagalog, but it's Spanish. Yeah,
Oh,
"Kumusta" is "Como está" in Spanish. It's "Kumusta." This is widely spoken in the Philippines, so it's "How are you?"
how are
Yeah,
you?
"Kumusta." Yeah, yeah. But what do you call this? Yeah, we commonly use English as a greeting.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm.
Since the effect of Spanish colonization, they actually have a Spanish, South American, and the Mexican accent where they pronounce the vowels clearly. For example, standard English pronounce color as a color, but in the Philippines they pronounce it as a color. Color.
This is quite interesting because the Philippines is also colonized by the Spanish.
Ah.
So if you compare us to our neighboring Southeast Asian
Mm.
neighbors, right? There's a very big difference in terms of how we pronounce the vowels.
Mm.
It's very strong Spanish background. So if you actually listen to the way we speak, you can actually compare it more to like South Americans or Mexicans.
Oh.
We pronounce the vowels very clearly, and the R's are very pronounced as well. So uh, yeah, those are the unique features compared to Southeast Asian neighbors. Yeah, and also compared to the standard English. Yeah. to a normal Filipino in out in the streets in Manila, the accent would be pretty much like a South American.
South
Yeah, I
American.
just give you an example, right? For example, in Malaysia you say color, right? Color in
Color.
Tagalog. Oh, sorry. In as a Filipino, you would say color.
Color.
Color, yeah, color.
Oh,
Yeah,
different, right?
it's very different. So when I came to Malaysia before, I mean, it's pretty hard to understand us, because of the way we speak. Yeah.
He gave an example of hot dog because they don't even have a word specifically for hot dog. The Philippines utilize loan words instead. As a result, some of Tagalog words being outdated and being replaced with English. And the impact is it becomes simpler to communicate with others when you can incorporate words into your conversation.
Yes, there are quite a few loan words. For example, hot dog. That's
Hot
what I
dog,
can
yeah.
think of because I'm quite hungry right now. Hot dog. We don't have a Filipino word for that. Hot dog is hot dog. Maybe in Malay you have sausage, right? But even that is
Yes.
also English. Yeah. So I guess the impact is that what do you call this? It becomes more it becomes easier to actually converse with each other when you have words that you can just use seamlessly in the way that you speak. If you have English words embedded into your conversations, it's much easier because some words that are some Tagalog words are actually already obsolete and you don't use them anymore. So instead, you change them with what do you call this? With English English words. Yeah. The impact is quite positive. Like what I said, it's easier to converse because of that. Yeah, you don't need to like think hard what 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 you are trying to say, because of this because of the injection of English words in the vocabulary. Yeah, yeah.
In this question, he only speak a combination of Tagalog and English when he meet his friends in Manila. But at home, he only speak exclusively in Tagalog.
Solely speak Tagalog at home.
Mm.
Yeah. I do speak English with my friends. Yeah, outside. We like in your previous question, we do mix English and Tagalog. Yeah, especially nowadays where social media is very I mean it's everywhere. So
So, for the justification, ever since the American colonization began, English has been accepted as a second language in Philippines, where mostly all of the Filipinos widely spoken in English and Filipino. The Philippine English have a unique in terms of colonization, culture, loanwords, and pronunciation. That's all for me. Now I will pass it to the next presenter.
Hi guys, and greetings to my fellow audiences. My name is Muazzam and I will be presenting to you on my subject, which I choose from outer circle country, Singapore. So, for the interviewee background, her name is Genesis Kwan Kien, born on September 28, 2009, is a 15 years old Chinese Singaporean with an educational background awaiting N level. So basically, Singapore's national exams are the PSLE, the GCE, the N level, O level, diploma, and degree. So right now she is on PSLE, and N O level is for kids ages 16 to 17. Why I choose Singapore as my subject is the English spoken in Singapore is very close to British English, yet it has its own character and melody due to Singapore is colonized by British and also because this multiracial country use English as their first language in their country. So how did English start to expand in Singapore? For the colonial period, during World War II, Britain and its forces took over Singapore and made it their colony. They spoke Malay, Tamil and Mandarin at that time. But when the British Empire came to Singapore, all of these languages changed. For the globalization, English spread in areas with many people, including children, and by the 1970s, Singapore's kids could easily communicate in the new language, which is Singlish. This language emerged when people of different races and cultures mixed up words, making it the universal language spoken in Singapore. So, for the first question I asked my interviewee is English widely accepted in Singapore? So, his answer to me is English is the most frequently spoken language in the globe, which has resulted in the establishment of English-only institutions. Nevertheless, in this multiracial nation, Malay, English, Chinese, and Tamil are also spoken. Students are better prepared for societal and professional environments by the government's promotion of English as a medium of communication.
Yes, it is widely accepted because it's the number one language in the world. So everything here is in English. But because we are a multiracial country, we have other main languages as well. This includes
Right.
English, Malay, Chinese, and Tamil. But mostly our government encourages us to communicate through English. So schools are taught in English to prepare youngsters for the next time we go out into society and work.
Moving on the next question, which I asked her, is it hard for Singaporean or Singapore people to learn English generally? So she answers to me is, in most cases no, but it might be hard for some. There are a mix of races, so there will be some Singaporeans who have home tongue is better than their English. Because of this, some Chinese Singaporeans are better at Chinese than English and find it hard to learn English.
Generally, no, but for some people, it may be hard because the fact that we are multiracial, there'll be some Singaporeans whose mother tongue is better than their English. So, for example, some of my Chinese friends, they are better than in Chinese than in English, and they find it
Okay.
challenging to learn the language.
This is for the third question. I asked her what kind of perspective does Singapore have towards English? Is it positive or negative? So she's answered to me, it is positive because English is the world's first language, and according to her, Singaporeans are encouraged to speak or learn or use English.
May I know?
It's positive, definitely positive. Like I said,
Okay.
English is the world's first language, so Singaporeans are encouraged to speak or learn or use English. And our
Oh,
education standard is quite high, so schools here try their best to help increase our knowledge on English.
For the fourth question, I asked her what different term do her use in Singapore compared to standard English. So the interviewer is uncertain as they also speak standard English, despite having their own language, which is Singlish, which they typically use for communication in school. So this is my 5 question asked my interviewee. So the answer she has given to me is standard English is learned from preschool to university, expanding vocabulary each year. Most schools in Singapore teach English, and due to the multicultural or racial nature of the country, such as Malaysia, China, Euro-Asians, and India, if speaking in Tamil during social classes like co-curriculum activity, it may cause language barriers between the different groups, causing them to separate rather than bond. This is why co-curriculum are often separate from school.
We learn standard English from preschool all the way to university, expanding our vocabulary for each year we study it, and learn about word classes and all of that. And most schools in Singapore are taught in English as well. And because it's a multiracial country, there'll be a mix
alright.
of Malay, Chinese, Eurasians, and Indians. So, for example, if you were to speak in Tamil during social classes like our co-curriculum activity, the Malays and Chinese and Eurasians may not understand, and will cause a language barrier, which separates us from each other rather than bonding and strengthening our relationship with one another, which is one of the reasons why CCAs were even introduced in school. So
Oh,
every every different age has a different level of English, but
alright.
we'll be able to speak it and we'll be able to understand it very well.
So moving on the next question, which is in what context she find herself using English words instead of Singapore equivalents. So she answers to me is Singaporeans typically use English when communicating with friends, colleagues, or people from other races, as it is the most widely understood language. Although they may have different mother tongues or second languages, English remains the common language they understand.
We'll use another language other than English talking to when I'm talking to people who is not good in English. So for example, my grandmother, she
All right.
she really go through the education. She didn't have an education, so she only knows how to speak Chinese. So I will talk to her in Chinese, but my Chinese isn't really that good. So sometimes I use Google Translate to get the words
Oh.
out.
So the next question is, I asked her, could she teach me a common greeting or phrase in her language in terms of her English in Singapore? So basically, she's answered to me, atas is a common phrase used to describe individuals who are snobbish, high class or fancy. She gave to me an example of sentence. Your pencil case damn atas leh, means your pencil case is fancy, but this often doesn't have a positive meaning.
Atas basically means it's a word to describe people who are snobbish or things that are high class or fancy. So example, your the pencil case usually it will be basic, but then there'll be buttons. There'll be that one person that has buttons on their pencil case. So I would say your pencil case damn atas eh. It will mean like your pencil case fancy yeah.
So for the next question, I asked her according to the lexical question, what are some unique lexical features in your English accent that distinguish it from other varieties of English? So she's answered, the Singaporean accent is often compared to Malaysians, with Singapore and Malaysia being considered brothers. Some Singaporeans may have adapted to their Malaysian accent, though this is uncertain and may be a misconception.
To standard English.
Some would say Singaporean accent is similar to Malaysians. I don't know why. I also see some similarities because I have Malaysian friends too. But
All right.
what makes it different from like people who speak in the US is like we have this some sort of mixed accent from Chinese and Malay. That's my perspective, my opinion. Like sometimes you have the Malay accent when talking English. Sometimes we have the Chinese accent when talking English. So and some have a mix of both. So it's very different and what makes us unique. So we feel like we belong when we talk in this accent and yeah.
So moving on to the next question, which I asked her, can she identify loanwords in Singapore English and discuss the impact on the language? So the interviewee acknowledged that they may not have learned the specific language yet, possibly due to her age right now, which is 15 years old, and their schools focus on standard English only, and thus not possessing any loanwords or other specific phrases. So moving on to the last question, as you can see on the slide. So my interviewee or my subject said to me that Singaporean isn't really a language. Singaporean is Singapore parents or residents, but their language is Singlish. This is my mistake because I asked her about the language as the Singaporean, but instead the language is Singlish. It's a mix of Tamil, Chinese, Malay, Cantonese, Hokkien, and English. So, for example, they have la, lo, le, a at the end of the sentence. And if she was to combine all languages, it would sound like this. First and foremost, they, hey in Tamil. Second one, every time we paktor, go on a date in Hokkien. The third one is we always makan, eat in Malay, at kopitiam, coffee shop in Malay. And there is one phrases that she has no idea where it came from, which is le. I want one le, like that. So this is what the Singaporeans usually sound like, although it is encouraged by the government to practice the standard English. She gets to me, it's how they feel like they belong. Because all countries have their unique things, and for Singaporeans, it is their language called Singlish.
Miss Genesis, do you usually mix Singaporean and English language while talking to your family members at home?
Uh, okay, first of all, Singaporean isn't really a language. The
Alright.
word Singaporean is to describe people who are Singapore PRs or residents. And yes, I do mix languages when speaking to my family or friends. So
Right?
Singapore has this thing like our language. It's not really a language, but it's Singapore language. Like we call it Singlish, Singapore English.
Singlish.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a mix of Tamil, Chinese, Malay, Cantonese, Hokkien, and English.
Okay.
So, for example, we have the expressions la, lo, le,
La,
ah,
lo, le, eh.
yeah. And
Okay.
if I were to combine all languages, it would sound like day. Every time we go Pak Tor, we always makan at kopitiam one. Like
Oh, so
yeah.
you
So
combine all the language into one sentence.
yeah. So that is basically Singlish.
Singlish.
And
Oh,
the sentence it means every time we go on a date, we always eat at coffee shop one. Like yeah, I don't know how it started, but all
okay.
I know is that since young, everyone around me was talking like that. So I also adapted to it, and
Mm.
yeah, it's been making sense for us Singaporeans. But I think if we talk like that to foreigners or people from other countries, they wouldn't understand the thing.
For the justification on the issues, in Singapore, despite the end of the British era, English remains the official language of Singapore, and children born after its widespread use can speak like native speakers. Although many still struggle with English language skills, it has its own language too, because long ago until now, people from different countries live there. It's also affected by the truth that Singapore is a key center for business in Asia. The English spoken in other places is a bit different. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening and see you again. I pass the presentation to the next presenter. Bye bye.
But actually they're not. So that's the whole
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, it's not preserving the traditional methods of
Correct,
how
correct.
you use your native language. But before that, may I ask, in Malaysia, do you speak fully Bengali with someone from Bangladesh?
Correct. Fully Bengali.
Oh, fully Bengali lah.
Yeah.
Oh, so the people in the Bangladeshis in Malaysia, how well in your experience, how well do they speak English?
That's also varies from the different group of people. So let's say they're from the educated family, they speak very good. If they're not, let's say the worker people over there, you see a lot of Bangladeshis working in constructions or in
Mm,
service sectors, right? They can understand what you are saying. You will be understanding what they're saying, but it's not proper English.
nice.
And that was an excerpt to my interview session with Mr. Rafi, someone from Bangladesh. Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Muhammad Aizad bin Muazzam, IDI 2208009 from DEC 5A. And today, I would like to present my analysis on the usage of English within the Kachru tree circle model, specifically in the outer circle, which is Bangladesh. Before we start off with the analysis, let me explain to you how English expanded into Bangladesh. Bangladesh was a part of British India until in 1947 when it became East Pakistan after the partition of India. During the British colonial period, English was introduced as the language of administration, education, and commerce. This laid the groundwork for English to become a prominent language in the region. After gaining independence from British rule, Bangladesh retained English as an important language in its education system. English medium schools and colleges were established, and English was taught as a second language in most educational institutions. The language's importance in education continued even after the country gained independence from Pakistan in 1971. Now that you know that, let's get into the good part. Let me first introduce you to our subject of interview. His name is Rafi bin Alam. He is 30 years old and was born in Dhaka, Bangladesh. He first migrated to Malaysia 8 years ago in 2017 to pursue his bachelor's degree in marketing at UNITA International University. Now, he is pursuing his PhD and is also working as a marketing specialist at a retail technology company. Before we start off, I think it's good to note that in Bangladesh, there are two mediums of education, which is English medium and Bangla medium. Both medium teaches the same syllabus but just in different language. For English medium, as the name suggests, all the subjects is learned in English. For Bangla medium, they mainly use Bengali as their medium of communication, which is also their first language. Without further ado, let's get to the first question. Is English widely accepted in Bangladesh? Based on Mr. Rafi's response, English is widely accepted in the Bangladesh. Mr. Rafi made a comparison from Dhaka to Kuala Lumpur because Dhaka is actually the capital city of Bangladesh, where most of the people there are able to speak fluently in English. About 40 to 50% of people in Dhaka are able to understand English. What this means here is that people in the urban areas are able to understand English more as compared to people in the rural areas. People in Dhaka can understand and can reply general questions or as simple as asking for directions. Moving on to the second question, is it hard for Bangladeshis to learn English generally? Based on Mr. Rafi's response, some Bangladeshis does find it hard to learn English. If someone does not see the need to learn English, then they won't do it. This is due to the English medium education system being very expensive as compared to Bangla medium education system. If they want to learn English while being in the Bangla medium education system, they will have to find other additional courses to learn English. For the third question, what kind of perspective does your country have towards English? Is it positive or negative? Based on Mr. Rafi's response, Bangladeshis have a very positive perspective towards English. Bangladeshis feel if they are able to speak English, their standards would be higher. This is because they are able to speak more than one language, which is English and Bengali. For the older generations of Bangladeshis, also sees the necessity of learning English as compared to millennials who fails to see the need to learn English. However, the Generation Z are able to see the need and the importance of learning English. Moving on to the next question, what different terms do you use in your country compared to standard English? Unfortunately, based on Mr. Rafi's response, there aren't any different terms that Bangladeshis use compared to standard English. This is because they either fully use Bengali as their native language or fully in English. For the fifth question, do you think the usage of English lexical items varies among different age group or social classes in your country? And Mr. Rafi explained that is a huge difference for English lexical items for people from different social classes. For example, people in the English medium is more equipped with English language skills as compared to the people in the Bangla medium. People from the Bangla medium only learn English from additional courses that they have to pay extra for and by speaking to others. In terms of age group, people from the older generations who learn English will have stronger knowledge on English and a stronger British accent as they have experienced the British colonization firsthand. Uh, as compared to the millennials who are much weaker in English as they are not too focused on learning English at that time. However, this is changed by the Generation Z who uses a lot of English and especially uses a lot of online English slangs like slay. Moving on to the sixth question, in what context do you find yourself using English words instead of your language equivalent? Unfortunately, Mr. Rafi responded with Bangladeshis doesn't use any English in their daily conversations. They would just prefer to speak fully in Bengali. The only situation where they need to speak English is when it is required. For the seventh question, we requested our subject to teach us a common greeting or phrase in their language. And Mr. Rafi responded with a few answers. First of which is Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum is the most used greeting despite the different in culture in religious background. For example, when a Hindu is talking to a Muslim, they will greet them with Assalamualaikum. However, when a Muslim is talking to a Hindu, they will greet them with Adab, or spelled A-D-A-P, Adab. And then Mr. Rafi proceeded to give me 3 different levels of saying how are you in their language. First of which is Kemon Acho. Kemon Acho is used for acquaintance or people who we know regularly. And then we have Kemon Asosh. Kemon Asosh is used for people who we know deeply and are close friends with. And then lastly, we have Kemon Achen. Kemon Achen is used for strangers, used to approach strangers respectfully. All 3 of these translates to how are you in Bengali. For the next question, what are some unique lexical features in your English accent that distinguish it from other varieties of English? And Mr. Rafi responded with 3 examples. First of which is how they pronounce the word schedule. For most Bangladesh, they would pronounce the word schedule as schedule. Schedule as schedule. Additionally, they would pronounce the word bargaining very differently. In standard English, we would pronounce the word bargaining as bargaining. However, in Bangladesh English, they would pronounce it as bargading. Bargading. And lastly, in Bangladesh, instead of using shopping, they use the word marketing. So for example, if you want to go shopping, in standard English, you would say, I'm going shopping. However, in Bangladesh English, they would say as, I'm going marketing. For the second last question, we ask our subject, can you identify some loanwords in your country and discuss their impact on the language? Unfortunately, Mr. Rafi responded with that there aren't any loanwords in their country that they use, as they mostly use Bengali as their main medium of communication. And for the last question, we ask our subject, do you perform code mixing while you talk with your family members at home? Could you elaborate more and give a good example of code mixing that you use? Mr. Rafi responded with, there aren't any code mixing used in his household, considering that most of Rafi's family members come from the Bangla medium, so they are not used to code mixing or using English in their daily conversation. When conversing with someone from English medium, most Bangladeshis would perform code mixing because they are able to both converse fluently in English. But for people from the Bangla medium, code mixing is not practiced, as they would only use Bengali as their main medium of communication.